Imagine a person who for many years lived under the burden of a heavy public accusation. Others had unofficially condemned him. He had condemned himself. The inner verdict kept ringing out: guilty. Then suddenly, there is an official trial, and, unexpectedly, the announcement comes: acquitted. Not conditionally, not partly, but completely. His past does not vanish, but his status changes. This is not just a change of mood. It is a change in the ground of life. That is roughly how Paul's contemporaries would have heard his teaching on justification. The Apostle Paul was a religious genius. He knew how to speak about the deepest theological matters in the language of his time. His first and primary theme was Christological and spiritual, following Jesus. Like other disciples, he began with a personal encounter and an inner turning. Christ became the center of his reality. Everything else flowed from that fact. But a second, equally powerful layer in his letters is legal vocabulary. Paul was not a lawyer by profession. He thought like a Pharisee, a scholar of Scripture. Yet he brilliantly deploys the rhetoric of court, justification, verdict, adoption, and debt. He speaks of God as judge, of Christ as the ground of justification, of faith as the transition into a new status. To his listeners, this sounded clear and persuasive. The world of the Roman Empire lived by concepts of law and status. Paul managed to express a spiritual experience in socially intelligible categories. At the same time, he used images familiar from the world of mystery religions: participation, initiation, rebirth, death, and life. But he filled them with different content, not a mythological rite of rebirth, but the experience of encounter with the historical Jesus. Modern readers often miss this layer because those cults have long since vanished. For Paul's listeners, it was a heady mixture. The Jewish Tanakh, Greco-Roman rhetoric, social vocabulary, parallels with mystery rites, and personal spiritual experience fused into a single picture. Crowds came to listen to the apostle. Paul became the architect of a new social reality first envisaged by Jesus himself: communities without ethnic barriers, without temple centralization, with horizontal ties. People of different statuses called one another brothers. This was not theory, but practice. Paul's theology was not a finished system, it was a process, the language of crisis and mission. Early Christianity was free, creative, and polyphonic. Many argued with him. Some thought his formulations went beyond the very words of Jesus. But his model worked. It allowed Gentiles to enter the faith without the Jewish ritual system. It provided a clear answer to the question of guilt and status. In an era when theology was still taking shape, that kind of structure proved decisive. Paul did more than adapt ideas. He translated the person and teaching of Jesus into the language of the imperial world. Here's another example. Imagine a scientist who has spent his life building a theory and then confronts facts that completely demolish it. He experiences an intellectual catastrophe. But instead of despairing, he creates a new paradigm capable of explaining the past, the rupture, and the future. Paul experienced something like that. His previous identity had been built on the law. His righteousness was understood as faithfulness to the Torah. And then, everything collapses. This is not merely a change of opinion. It is a change in the foundation of identity. Such an upheaval demands explanation. The legal model gives a clear boundary. There was a verdict, now there is acquittal. It removes guilt. The past does not determine the future. It systematizes experience. God is judge, Christ is the ground, faith is the transition, the sentence is annulled. That does not mean Paul invented justification for psychological comfort. His experience of grace required a language, a coherent explanation, and the legal framework was the most powerful rhetorical form of his time. Anyone's theology is conditioned by something: trauma, searching, circumstances, and so on. Paul is no exception. But in his case, the personal catastrophe became the source of a creative synthesis. He combined spiritual experience, scripture, and the cultural language of his age. That is why his letters continue to influence civilization. They do more than describe faith. They show how faith can survive crisis and become a new reality. Unlike Paul, Peter, John, or any human being, the person and teaching of Jesus are conditioned by nothing but cosmic infinity. Even if Paul was brilliant, time moves on and humanity changes. After a while, his brilliant ideas will increasingly lose their resonance with the contemporary person. The legal language and theology will fade in relevance, making way for a far deeper teaching of Jesus Christ that will shape the development of civilization for many billions of years.